Hey, welcome back, everybody. It's time again for the Esports Connection, the one show, maybe the only show, that shows you a world of people in the esports industry. Those making it happen and making a difference right now, with our host, who's also making a difference here today by bringing us all these people here. Harrison Griffith. Hey, Harrison.
Thank you for that glowing intro again, Paul. Like Paul said, I am your host, Harrison Griffith, the host of the Esports Connection, and I created this show as a sort of place for people in the community to swap stories and talk about the business and the esports industry itself. We're talking about the people making it happen, like our guest today, Shanda Harris. How's it going, Shanda?
Hello, thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. So you might have noticed that Shonda's not in studio with us. She is currently in Kentucky, as she is the director of esports at Northern Kentucky University. So Shanda, I want you to tell us a little bit about yourself and your job there.
So I'm originally from Pennsylvania, and how I got connected to esports in Northern Kentucky University. I actually am an alum of NKU, but during the pandemic, I worked for a company called Game Day Communications, which is a communications marketing and event management firm in Cincinnati. So I was an event manager at the time, and what happened was, because of COVID, there were no more gig economy, gigs going on. So my CEO at the time, Jackie Rowe, she came to myself and a colleague and said, "Hey, I want to start an esports program." Of course, we were like, "What?" We knew about video games. The office was really laid back. We could play video games during, work time or for break. But then we went full force with it. So I did that for about 2 years there. And then I did some consulting with Northern Kentucky University on starting their esports program in 2020. And then, fast forward a few years later, they needed a little more help in the way of, helping to more so on the operations side. And I applied for the position, and here we are. And that's how I got in. But I'm not just the director of esports. I do also teach. So I teach sports business classes as well. So it's kind of a double duty thing.
Yeah, we could. I would love to talk a little bit more about the parallels between traditional sports business and esports. But yeah, no, that was a great intro from your involvement in Game Day Esports to your current role at NKU. We would consider you an industry veteran, absolutely, on the show. So as the director of NKU Esports, what would you say are your primary goals and visions for the program's future?
So right now I'm looking to expand the space that we currently hold. I mean, it's a nice space for us, but our arena is it seems smaller and smaller. I want to expand it more, but not just in the sense of, just for gamers, but for educational purposes. So we do have a variety of gamers. I have 40 gamers. We play 5 different types of competitive games. However, we do have a production side. So I'm looking to build that production side and to include more opportunities for our students for experiential learning to do production that focuses around esports.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's great. We love talking about the educational value that esports has and the potential that it has in this industry. So yeah, I heard that you also have a varsity program. As well as, I think I read something about having an esports minor at Northern Kentucky University. I feel like I'm seeing a lot of these programs pop up just kind of randomly all over the country. What do you think the future of these programs looks like at NKU?
Honestly, we are building more and more, mostly trying to get many people who don't even understand what esports is, understanding it. We have faculty and staff that are interested, but more so when we're doing our recruiting of students, we're letting them know, like, hey, we have not only an esports club, we have an esports minor as well as a varsity program. So that helps out, the university as a whole. Because we do have traditional sports in the way of basketball and, track, baseball, softball. We don't have a football team. So esports is another way for students who aren't in the traditional sports realm to come and be
Hmm.
part of the esports realm, as well as learn about esports management.
Yeah, so you teach sports business classes, and you also have a degree in business of sports. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So
So,
oh, I would say whenever I am trying to explain esports to somebody who might be older or might not see the appeal, like our host Paul just pointed towards himself. Uh, I always try to go to the parallel of regular sports because it really does provide a lot of the similar benefits. In it provides community, it's experiential learning, like you mentioned, team building, as well as it being a lot more of a social thing than most parents have the impression of. Uh, a lot of parents, I would say, have a negative impression of esports because a lot of parents might say, he plays enough video games at home. Why would I want him playing video games at school too? But it really isn't the same as just playing video games at home. There's full programs for this. The students have all these abundances of resources, and
mm.
yeah. So I was wondering what you thought about both the parallels. I know there was a lot there, but I was wondering what you thought of the parallels between traditional and regular sports are.
So I had to explain this coming in to a lot of people when I first got on campus. I work in the College of Business.
Hmm.
So many of the faculty and staff were like, well, what is this thing called esports? And of course, many of them were older. And they didn't really quite understand, that even with traditional sports, the discipline that you have to have in your studies, and also in this activity, it's parallel to, esports.
Hmm.
Traditional, we have the same things, they compete, they have to have a certain GPA percentage.
Hmm.
It's not all just playing video games. And that's one of the things that I had to really, really let people know that they're not just here just playing video games. That's one of the things that really bothered me at first because they're like, it's just video games. And I'm like, well, it's just basketball or, it's just baseball. So to help the older generation and as well as parents, I did have some parents on campus that have young kids that play. I had to do a lot of explaining, like, yes, this is good for cognitive skills. It's good for
Hmm.
socializing. It's good for them to build confidence.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of different areas, that although people didn't see the physicality of, playing basketball or baseball, it's still very physical in the sense of mental and physical drain on your body. I
Hmm.
have gamers that, sometimes our matches start at 8 p.m. Eastern time, and we might be there depending on how long the match goes until midnight, and then they
Yeah.
have to come in to class the next day, probably some of them at 8 o'clock in the morning, and be alert and focused. So we had to focus on, that health and wellness is another big thing that I like to focus on, but also my number one is as much as I like esports, as much as I like traditional sports, my number one concern is focus is their education.
Hmm.
And that's just the old school in me. Your education comes first. That's what you're here for. Although we do offer scholarships and, a way for you to be in this position, your grades still are important.
Hmm. Yeah. So you mentioned cognitive skills and confidence being among some of the skills that kids can develop in these programs. In your opinion, what are some other key skills and qualities that aspiring esports professionals should cultivate to succeed in the industry? And how does Northern Kentucky University aim to nurture these skills in its players and students?
One of the things that I found is a lot of some of my gamers, not a lot of them, but some of them aren't very good with public speaking. Some of them aren't
Hmm.
very good with, connecting and actually having a conversation um, with another person. As soon as, we're like, hey, so we want you to hop on and, maybe shoutcast or
Yep.
maybe do an interview, it's like I freeze up. So one of those things that I'm really, really, really concerned with is communication in general. And it's not just being in interviews, but just communicating with me or with your family or with your friends, because if there is something wrong, if there's something stressful or school or anything, I want them to be able to express that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't ever want anyone to walk around thinking or feeling that they're alone or they can't express their feelings. So we have ways of, having meetings. Also, we do have classes at the university, communication classes as well. So we try to build and nurture that, and also let them know, like, hey, we are here. It doesn't have to pertain to school. It doesn't have to even pertain to esports. A lot of our professors on campus are literally just there to talk and listen. So one of those things is, I will say, is communication,
Mm-hmm.
professionalism.
Yeah, making
Be
yourself marketable as
yes,
a
yes,
player. Yeah.
right, and also being professional.
Mm-hmm.
If you know the esports industry, sometimes it can be very toxic. And one of the things that we do not allow for in competing is negativity, or that negative energy. Understanding that it can be very, very, when you're competing, you're like, you're
Mm-hmm.
there, you're gung ho, and there's sometimes you may say things,
That's right. Yeah.
and it can really affect you. I mean, I've seen it, I've heard it, coming from the professional side into collegiate esports. There wasn't much of a change. So that was one of the things too. Our program is very diverse, where we have female gamers as well.
Mm-hmm.
We have, diverse in the way of, African Americans, all different types of cultures that we have within our program. So we're very sensitive to that.
Mm-hmm.
But to go on the other side of that, we do, marketing. We want you to be marketable. We want you to be professional. Making sure that anything, we do have, professional gamer on our squad, on one of our teams. So we want to make sure that, even though at times when they're not representing Northern Kentucky and they're representing
Mm-hmm.
themselves, that they're prepared. Never want anything to come back negative in the media or to any of our gamers.
Yeah, no. So there's a few things there that I wanted to open up. One thing you mentioned was that you have esports programs for girls, and you try to be very inclusive towards marginalized groups trying to enter esports. Because esports is often seen as like a male-dominated industry for sure. I wanted to get your take on that, and why you're an industry veteran from our perspective. Why do you think that more girls aren't attracted to esports, and what could we do to change that?
One thing I will say is the respect, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about parallels to traditional sports. There's a lot of times where they're not respected with their skills, and their ability to even game.
Mm-hmm.
So with parallel to traditional sports, women, we don't have it separated. So there's not like a women's team and a men's team. They actually game together.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no separation as with traditional sports. So that respect, and just having the respect not only from your team but also from who you're competing against. And then like the marginalized groups. When I walked in, nobody expected to see me. An African American woman, esports, what does she know? How does she game? So there's a lot of areas of sensitivity, but we work very hard to be inclusive. We work very hard to make sure, and in working hard to be inclusive, we want to make sure we're not excluding anyone as well. So, that's one of the things, is being females. Like I was saying earlier, in one of the conferences that we compete in, NACE, there's a group within our Discord called Women in NACE, and many people that get there, we have conversations about, there's times where it might just be, hey, what are you going through at your school?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, hey, there's this going on. What do you think about this? If something's going on in the industry, what do you think about it? How do you think it's going to affect us as females?
Mm-hmm.
So there's those. And then also LinkedIn, I'm in a group, Collective Queens, where that's, mostly African American females. And again, talking about the gaming industry, talking about being, most of the times, and in my instance, many times, not just the only female in the room, but the only African American female in the room. So, how do you handle that professionally, and not get discouraged,
Yeah, no,
so
that was one of our what I wanted to ask you next is how did you not get discouraged? How did you overcome some of these barriers that were in your way?
um I hate to say it, but most of the times, even in my previous employment, I was the only, African American or, in the company. So there are many times where I've faced issues. And one of the hardest times I think that I had was during the pandemic. The company I worked for, very sensitive to situations that were going on, but didn't know how to approach it,
Mm-hmm.
and didn't know how to approach me without being offensive or thinking they were being offensive. So there's been many times in situations where I've been in that particular situation where I'm the only one in the room. However, I wasn't discouraged from it. Honestly, I think it built my confidence even more, especially when I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So it doesn't come across as, you need to respect me. It was that respect was given. So
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get discouraged in a sense, but there were times where I sat back and thought, what are you doing here? What are you really doing here? um, but I continue on. I have a great
Yeah.
group of support at NKU. I have great support with my family, and especially my gamers.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very supportive. When I came in, I didn't know how they would accept me, coming in when they were used to the previous GM and director. So I wasn't, I was kind of, filling that out, but accepted me, and now the rest is history.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, Shanda, we've only known you for about a half an hour, but I think that you're a fantastic role model for young women and men alike aspiring to be in this industry. So, really, you are doing God's work in terms of representing what we'd like to see in this industry. But yeah,
Thank
no,
you.
I do want to. Paul's giving me a signal here, so I do want to bring you towards our one of our closing questions.
Mhm.
Which is a little bit more on the lighthearted side. We just wanted to know what your personal favorite video game was. Could be, a game you played
Wait,
as a
was
kid.
or is?
I
Was or
guess
is?
I think of all time, I would say of all time.
Oh, that's
So,
tough. Oh
yeah,
my gosh, that's tough.
favorite game of all time. That's all right. We'll give you a minute to think about it.
I don't, I, so I loved Galaga.
Galaga? Okay.
That's old school,
Mm-hmm.
one of my favorites. I liked Space Invaders as well.
Mm-hmm.
If this ages me, I got like my first gaming console was an Atari in 1980. So it's been a very long time that I've been gaming.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, what I'm addicted to, super, super addicted to, is the game Grounded. Um, it's like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, but just in game form. So,
So you're like shrunken down into an environment and you have to.
yes, in a backyard,
Oh,
and
okay. I've seen. Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen. It's. I looked it up now. No, yeah, no, that game looks amazing. Me myself, I
oh,
just my fiance just talked me into buying the new Zelda game. So, I that's the first one of those games like that I played, and I get the appeal. Just being in a
yes, my
cool.
sister's a
Yeah.
big Zelda. She's a big, big Zelda. I mean, it's crazy because, my family, we all still play video games together, even though we're, spread out.
Hmm.
So we still pretty much, have a game night, and it's a lot easier now than it was back when, in ancient times.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm glad you're still able to stay connected. I don't think I'll be playing video games with my old man anytime soon, as he played Space Invaders, but that's where he stopped. That's where his
Oh
video game knowledge
no,
stopped.
no, it gets intense. It's an intense game night for us, when we're gaming. I have a daughter, and it's gonna age me. She's 33, and and then my sister. So we game, it's still intense, and
Hmm.
if you're not up to par, you get kicked off. So.
You gotta be up to snuff in the Harris household.
Yes, you do.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you again, Shanda. It's been a pleasure to have you on our show, the Esports Connection.
Yes,
This
thank you
has
so much for
been
having me. I hope you invite me back. This was great.
absolutely no, yeah, maybe maybe a couple months from now, we'll have a repeat guest. You'll be our first
In
repeater.
person.
Maybe,
Right.
yeah. If you're ever in California, stop by the studio. We're gonna hold you to that.
All righty. Absolutely.
But yeah, thank you, Paul. You can play us out.
There you have it. One more reason to tune in each and every time. We don't just talk local. We're going across the country. We're talking to everybody out there that's making an impact in this industry on the Esports Connection, streaming live from our studios here at the University of California, Irvine's Beall Applied Innovation Center. Okay, there we go. Let me just get this off here.